to make a hat, begin with a slip knot. And then you'll place the slip knot on the anchor peg. And then I usually start at the peg to the right of the anchor peg, and you bring the yarn behind and then around the front, behind and around the front, and just wrap it like this. One common mistake that students will do is they will come around the front and behind the back, and that will be a problem because you can see it crossing here on the front of the peg, and that will cause problems down the road. So make sure that the yarn goes behind and around. I always tell the students that the crossing of the yarn should happen on the inside of the circle, and the front side of the circle, or the front side of the peg, should be the flat piece of yarn. So around, behind and around. Until you get to the peg that is to the left of the anchor peg. So wrap that one, and then hold on to your yarn for a second while you push down. Okay, then wrap a second time, so beginning with that first peg to the right of the anchor peg, wrap one more round, behind and around. And I just wrapped the peg that is to the left of the anchor peg, so I can stop. Hold on to my working yarn for a minute, and the last peg I just wrapped, I'm going to take the bottom up and over, then that will secure my working yarn. And then I usually like to work backwards around the circle, taking the bottom up over the top. Until each peg only has one stitch remaining on it. And then once you've done that, push down. And then repeat the process, begin wrapping again, and don't forget, here's the anchor peg, so always start to the right of that anchor peg, wrapping around, go behind and around the front, and then behind and around the front. After a few rounds of knitting, you can remove this string from the anchor peg and just pull it down on the inside of the loom. That way your hat can continue to come down through the loom. Continue knitting until you have about 3 to 4 inches, and then we will come back and make the brim of the hat. Once you have between 3 to 4 inches, especially for this size hat or for this size loom, you can stop to make the brim. So you're going to push the yarn, push your work up through the center, and then take the tail and kind of fold it in between there. And then you're going to, about where the tail is, you're going to line that up with your anchor peg, and you're going to find the stitch near the tail. And you're going to take one of those strands and then put it on top of the peg. Make sure your working yarn stays between those 2 pegs that's close to the anchor peg. And then just go all the way around and pull one stitch. You kind of have to unroll the bottom edge and make sure that you get one stitch on each peg. And this will create the brim of the hat. Oops. So sometimes if you stretch the yarn, you can see the bottom a little bit better and find the stitch to grab. Alright, then every single peg should have a strand of yarn, or 2 strands of yarn on it, and then you're going to take the bottom up and over and do that all the way around. Oops. Sometimes if a stitch comes off, just have to put it back over the peg, try again. There we go. Once you have completed that, then you can push down. And now you have the nice thick part of your, the nice thick brim of your hat. And then you'll continue wrapping. So starting to the right of that anchor peg, go behind and around, and just continue your rounds like before until your hat is long enough. So probably about another 5 or 6 inches or so. Alright, once you are ready to finish off your hat, you're going to take your working yarn and just wrap it around the outside of the loom about twice, just to measure a long enough length, and then cut. Okay, then you will take, and you don't, after that last round of taking the bottom up and over, you don't need to push your stitches down to the bottom. So now you're going to thread your needle. And then again, you'll start with the peg to the right of the anchor peg. You're going to go from the bottom up with your needle, pull the needle through, all the way through. And you're going to do this to every peg all the way around the loom. So from the bottom up. Sometimes you might want to push the stitches maybe halfway down, but not all the way to the bottom. once you get back to this anchor peg, so this will be my last peg, but then we're going to go ahead and jump across and we're going to do the peg to the right of the anchor peg one more time. So this one gets threaded twice. And then, leaving the needle on the strand of yarn, because we'll need that in a little bit, we're going to take our hook and take all these stitches off. Now we have a nice hat, and you just gently pull the string that you wove through each stitch. And before you close it all the way, keep the top open just a little bit so you can take the needle and you're going to put it down through the hole. And then we're going to turn the hat inside out. And now you can finish pulling it closed tightly. And then we're going to take the needle and just kind of go through a couple of the stitches near the top of the hat. And then before we pull it all the way through, we're going to take the needle back through the loop we just created in order to form a knot. And then kind of pull tightly to cinch the top of the hat closed. And then I usually do that about 2 more times just to secure the hat. Through it, make a knot. And maybe one more. Now double knot the last one, just to be safe. And then I leave a little bit of a tail, because that'll be the inside of the hat, so it won't matter. And then turn it around, and there you have the hat.